and welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence.
And this is Mark Florence.
And today we're talking about Misery. Misery came out in 1990. It had a $20 million budget, made $61 million at the box office, and it has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 90%. Mark, did you know that Kathy Bates won Best Actress for this? She won an Academy Award and a Golden Globe.
I did not realize that. No, that's really awesome.
Do you think she deserved it?
Yeah, I mean, she totally, I bought into the character, and she creeped the hell out of me, so yes.
Oh my gosh, like some of her line readings were insane, like literally and figuratively in every definition of that word. Now, James Caan was great, but did you know the part was originally offered to so many actors before him? Tell me what your thoughts are on these. For the first person they wanted, and they offered it to him twice, and he turned it down, was William Hurt. Like, whatever. Okay, Mark doesn't even know who that is. Kevin Kline, Michael Douglas, Harrison Ford, Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Richard Dreyfuss, Gene Hackman, and Robert Redford were all offered the part, and they turned it down.
Why?
Well, I mean, horror isn't necessarily held in high regard. The person who accepted the role was Warren Beatty, but he said, I think the character is too passive, though, so I'm going to sign on, but we need to make him less passive. But then he started making that movie Dick Tracy, and then he bowed out, and then James Caan came on board.
I love Dick Tracy.
You do?
I mean, I remember seeing it, and it was a pretty sweet movie visually, if I remember right.
Yeah, that's one of those comic book movies. So anyway, Al Pacino or Robert De Niro? Like, no. Harrison Ford, I was trying to picture him during this rewatch because I knew that ahead of time. And, like, he would have been believable, but James Caan, I think, was just perfect.
No, I think James Caan and Gene Hackman are two pretty similar actors. I think Gene Hackman could have done it, but I think James Caan was perfect for it.
Yeah, the way that he was sort of sassy back to her and like sarcastic. I mean, his line readings were great. I don't know that I would have believed some of the other actors. I mean, I would have. Now, when this was an adaptation on Broadway, Bruce Willis played the role.
Wow, I didn't even know that. So that's cool.
Yeah. So Stephen King wrote the book, of course, and it's ironic because he later did get into an accident where he was struck by a vehicle and almost died. Thankfully, he wasn't held captive and forced to write something like this character was, but it was sort of a premonition that this writer gets into a terrible accident.
Yeah, I don't think he should have been out driving through the mountains in the snow in his old car. That's a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, we're assuming the reason he was doing it was for a deadline to his publisher, which, those exist. But can you imagine having to actually type an entire book on a typewriter? Like, we take it for granted that now we can back things up and save them on a computer. And there's only that one copy.
Only if the typewriter had spell check. That's the only way I could do it.
Yeah, spell check really, truly has come on major in my life.
I liked his ritual right away after he wrote his book, where he had one cigarette and then a glass of, I can't remember what it's called.
Dom Perignon champagne.
Yeah, there you go. So I thought that was a cool ritual, and then it came full circle at the end.
Very nice. Oh, and speaking of this driving, you were saying you don't think he should be driving, but that looks like basically any day in Minnesota, especially this winter so far. Like, we drove through, post a pretty terrible snowstorm over Thanksgiving, and you drove most of the way, and it was like driving on a glacier. That's the only way I can describe it, because it was nuts.
Yeah, James Caan has nothing on what we drove through, so, I mean, we could have made it through that. But, no, he couldn't see, and he did not have the proper vehicle, so I felt kind of bad for him. So at first you don't know she's a nurse. She's giving him these drugs, like he thinks to help her, but what drugs do you think they were?
Well, I believe that they really were painkillers, but pretty strong, so that they would knock him out. And then when he started to realize that, he starts to pocket them and not take them. I'm going to talk a little bit about the second season of Castle Rock as we're talking about this, it could be considered sort of a prequel. It's not in the same time era, of course, but there's a lot of nice things that they brought in about Annie Wilkes that they tied in to Castle Rock from this movie. One of the things that it reminded me of, she needs to take antipsychotics, and her daughter is forcing her to take her pills, but really she's not, and she's hiding them. And so it's funny, they brought that in, and then Paul Sheldon ends up doing that to her later on in her life. So I thought that was a nice little callback.
Yeah, I just caught the tail end of you watching that show, so, and then you revealed it was a prequel, and that was Annie Wilkes, so I thought that was pretty cool. And then we just watched this a couple days later. So yeah, I mean, I remember seeing this movie when I was 9, maybe. I feel like I saw it in the movie theater, but I mean, the burning image in my head is when she breaks his feet in the hobbling scene.
Oh my gosh, it's so drastic. I can't imagine that you saw this in the theater because it came out in 1990. Like, that doesn't seem that would have been appropriate. But who knows?
Well, you take Vienna to some questionable movies.
Touche. But so the interesting thing, in the book, she actually amputates one of his feet. And the director said, I think amputation is too extreme, so let's do this instead. The screenwriter was on board with it. Stephen King actually says that this is one of the adaptations of his novels that he likes. So believe me, either way, it's effective. Maybe it's almost more effective if you see those ankles breaking, because my God.
Yeah, you can't get that visual out of your head. And like, watching it again, it wasn't as bad as I originally thought. And I originally thought they showed both of them getting broken, but they only show the first one, and then they just show his face on the second one. And the noise is pretty bad too, so all that together.
No, something I've realized, like, I can handle a lot of gross and gruesome stuff, and I know when it's in a movie it's fake. But lately I've been watching, some real sort of shows, and like Dr. Pimple Popper, we've talked about this before. I can handle that. Like, I can handle a cyst or whatever getting taken out. But there's this new show on TLC called My Feet Are Killing Me, and it's people with problems with their feet. And this is like, I've realized this is the line that I can't cross, because they've shown this real surgery on like the bottom of people's feet and removing these things. And when I see a foot getting cut into, that does something to me, like viscerally, and I feel physically ill. How do you feel about seeing people's feet getting cut in real life?
I don't see why anybody would watch it, so I choose not to watch it. But I can handle it if I had to. I don't understand the fascination with these shows, but whatever.
It's pretty freaking fascinating, but I have realized, though, I'm not grossed out by very much, but this is maybe my breaking point.
And then the other night, Kelly showed me My 600-Pound Life. A guy, I think he weighed like 1,000 pounds, and he had like a 100 or 200-pound growth like on his leg. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.
So how did that one end?
Well, he was losing weight, but he was going to get surgery eventually to remove that growth, but he hadn't reached the ideal weight yet, so... But we digress.
So I didn't think his accident in the beginning looked that bad, really. Like, he went in the ditch. It was all tons of snow, so you really wouldn't hit that hard. So I'm wondering if a lot of his injuries weren't inflicted by her after, maybe, like when he was out, or I don't know. Maybe not.
Well, I believe he probably dislocated his shoulder from that crash. I don't know. We didn't see the damage to what happened inside the car, like what happens with his legs, but it was probably realistic. Dislocations can be painful, right, Mark?
Well, no, really quick though, I will say in those old cars, like, safety was not a priority, so I honestly can see that. And to Kelly's point, he dislocated his finger, or his shoulder. I recently dislocated my thumb when I took a fall, and I gotta say, it's very painful. Don't take your thumb for granted. You can't do anything. You can't like zip your pants or like open a jar or anything. So dislocations are real.
Yes, and they're painful. I mean, there's things that we take for granted, like you said. My mom dislocated the same kneecap twice. You can dislocate your kneecap, and I guess that's really painful too. So, yikes.
And then I was thinking after the accident, like, what are the chances that this guy's number one fan, like, finds him? But she was actually, like, kind of following him. Like, she knew he was up in that lodge writing the book, and I think she knew that he had just finished, so I think she was actually following him.
Yeah, she was. She mentioned that. And, this whole thing speaks to fandom culture, and it's so much worse and more prevalent now, I feel like. It may be because we're seeing it more because people can be more vocal, but fans of a certain writer or of a certain show or a certain fandom, they start to feel like they own it in some way. And if these showrunners or these writers or whoever take a different turn and, from what they want, people are really vocal about it. And not to the point of kidnapping someone, but,
You were kind of like that with Sherlock, I felt. Like, you got really into that, and you really took it personally, I felt.
I did. I think it's too soon to talk about, but yes, I think they redeemed themselves with the new reboot of Dracula. I was I enjoyed that, so we'll see. I realized that was maybe a moment in my life when I had to take a step back and be like, okay, fandom can be toxic, especially if you're just listening to all the rest of the fans in an echo chamber. So it's important to realize we don't own it. Sometimes you just have to take what you can get.
Yeah, and I also feel like super fans feel such a connection to like a celebrity or something, but they don't remember or don't realize that the celebrity doesn't know them at all. So it's like a very one-sided relationship.
True.
I don't know, to change the subject here. Like, her whole vibe was just creepy to me. Like, she lived in this old fashioned type house out in the middle of nowhere, and the way she dressed, super old fashioned, and just the way she talked was almost like a naive child, or I don't know, someone who's super righteous, but she's the opposite of that. So it's kind of like a conundrum or whatever contradiction, I guess is the right word.
Could be a conundrum too. Yeah, and I really appreciated, and what made me want to go back and rewatch this movie was Lizzie Kaplan's portrayal of Annie Wilkes in season 2 of Castle Rock. She has all of these affectations down. The writers wrote her calling people a dirty bird, dirty birdie, and she doesn't swear. She's very against swearing, and so she keeps using all these other words instead of swear words, and it just seems so ridiculous. And then when he finds, we're jumping ahead a bit in the plot, but when he finds that scrapbook, and she's been keeping all the obituaries for the people that she's been killing in the hospital, and then sprinkled in there are just regular pictures of her pet pig and stuff. It's so wrong, and it gave me physical goosebumps.
And it seemed weird that she would keep all those negative headlines about herself, baby dies at this hospital, and I don't know, just it's she was proud of it, or I don't know. So it's made me feel weird.
It is weird. Our new book, The Science of Women in Horror, which is coming out February 18th, has a chapter on misery and talking about women as healers. And Annie Wilkes, she's supposed to be a healer. And she's a nurse. She's supposed to be helping people, but she's really the opposite of that. And there are you can read more about it in our chapter, but there are historically some women who were nurses or in these roles where they were supposed to be healing, and really they're harming people. And so that too is a contradiction in itself. And it's so wrong. It's rife for horror.
And then just the whole situation, James Caan, what's his name again?
Paul Sheldon.
Paul Sheldon is he can't walk, he can't move one of his arms, so he's completely reliant on this lady to help him, and she's just nuts. So it's just this really awkward, uncomfortable feeling situation the whole time, and it's even more uncomfortable by the way she acts. She's usually super happy and positive, but she's doing all these terrible things to him, but then she can just at a moment's notice like turn super negative, and like she's like, I got a gun, Paul, and she like showed him the gun, and she's like, sometimes I think about using it. I'm gonna go get some bullets for now, and then she leaves.
It was so creepy. And Kathy Bates, I mean, really, her line readings of in that scene in particular are so strikingly different compared to her normal upbeat self, like you said, when she's like, oh, sometimes the rain gives me the blues. It's so wrong. It's so like, what is he going to do? He, like you said, he's physically trapped. Even if he could break out of the house, which he hasn't been able to do, he doesn't have anywhere to go. He's injured. There's no vehicle. There's no phone. There's just nothing. People, are thinking that they have to wait for the spring melt to find his body. Oh, but this sheriff and his deputy, which is his wife, I love them so much. And I feel sad that, spoiler alert, he got killed, but I just love them.
Yeah, he was a great character. Like, he had a sweet, like, cowboy winter coat. A lot of this movie actually reminded me of Red Dead Redemption, too. Just a aside. Like, you wear coats like that in the game, and you're, like, riding around in the in the mountains, and there's, like, homesteads kind of like hers. But, yeah, no, he was a great character. Like, and his wife was a great character, too. Like, she was super feisty, and, like, she's like, I'd rather be at home under the covers with you or something. And he's like, you're my deputy. So, it's pretty funny.
It was cute. No, they were adorable. And then I was trying to figure out where I knew her from, and she's Cliff Clavin's mother on Cheers, and so that's where I recognized her from.
Yeah, and I thought to myself too during this, how is he going to the bathroom? But then, like 5 minutes later, they showed him going to the bathroom in like I don't know what you call it, like some little container thing, and then she's holding it, like talking to him. Like it was kind of funny.
Yes, I mean the truth about somebody being bedridden and everything that goes along with that. It's true.
But she was a nurse, so that's how she was able to take pretty good care of him, like literally like set his broken bones and stuff. So at the beginning it seemed like it was all legit and stuff, but then it gradually just turned worse and worse.
I said at one point I was complaining about how tomorrow I might not have time to write, because we're working on our third book, which, speaking of misery, we're working on The Science of Stephen King. And I was like, gosh, I wish I would get kidnapped and like forced to write a book because then I could have some time alone. But I would not want to go through this. So please, nobody kidnap me to do this. That was not a serious request. I wouldn't mind spending some time though, like in a lodge in Colorado to write. That sounds relaxing.
Yeah, I'll look into that for you.
Oh, great.
No, but can you imagine writing the final chapter of your book knowing that when you finish it, this lady's gonna kill you and then kill herself? I mean, that's kind of a lot of pressure.
Oh my God. I am really surprised by how he was able to keep his composure and have that plan of like, okay, I got this lighter fluid now, and I'll tell her to get the match to light the cigarette, and like this whole plan worked out. It was quite a struggle at the end, though. But, I was just thinking about Warren Beatty saying he didn't want Paul to be as passive. Like, what do you want him to be? You can't have him be, like, physically fighting with her every other scene because she'd just kill him.
No, he had to, like, mentally play her game, or else he would have been, like, dead, I think.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, so, I mean, he had to, like, agree with her and tell her, like, he was happy there and, like, that he loved her and stuff. And sometimes she bought it, sometimes she didn't, depending on her mood. But he had to play along because he really had no other choice.
Exactly. Like, F you, Warren Beatty. I think that was a terrible note to give the screenwriter.
And then the few times he did try stuff, he collected all these pills that she was giving him and poured them all into this envelope. And then he planned this dinner they were going to have. And when she left, he poured it all in her wine. And then it all seemed good until she spilled her wine.
Oh, it was so frustrating. And the look on his face, is the look on our faces, because you just have so much hope. And of course, we've seen it before and we know what's going to happen, but it's just dark. One thing that she does a couple times to him, at least the first time that I noticed, she gives him the shot to make him pass out. She does it one night to search his room when she realized he's been out, and then she does it again when the sheriff comes over. that also is something that comes into play in season 2 of Castle Rock. I'm not going to give away the entire plot because I think you should go watch it, listeners. But that shot again comes into play. There's a really nice. There's a subplot with these Somali refugees in Castle Rock, and one of our hometown actors from Minnesota who was nominated for Captain Phillips with Tom Hanks. He played a Somali pirate in that movie. He's in the show, and so I thought that was good for him because he used to be a limo driver, and then a year later he was at the Academy Awards. So it looks like he's doing well with his life. What else about this movie, Misery?
No, did you find it weird that it was not like a sexual thing for her with him, or not?
No, and especially because I just recently watched Castle Rock. Annie's not, she's not that she maybe doesn't want romantic love, but in her life, she's had such bad luck with men that she might be asexual. But she loves Paul in maybe a romantic way, but not in a sexual way.
But she seems like really prim and proper and like old fashioned and like naive kind of. So yeah, maybe that was part of it too.
Yeah.
They did show the show Love Connection with Chuck Woolery, and these guys' mullets were just fantastic.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I wonder if that's streaming anywhere. I used to watch that show every day when I came home from school, and one of my memories was how Chuck Woolery would always say, we'll be back in 2 and 2, and my friend and I set a timer, and it was true. It was 2 minutes and 2 seconds worth of commercials, and I did a timer the other day on Nick Jr. when the kids were watching something, and the commercial was between 5 and 7 minutes. They have so many more commercials now.
Yeah, no, the mullets to me were they almost seemed fake. They were so ridiculous. But, I mean, I'm sure that was just a real episode of that show. And I don't even know if it was supposed to be, a funny episode or just an episode. So
I think it was just showing what we were watching in 1990. My goodness. Yeah, we need to watch some vintage Love Connection.
Now, at one point, so he's done with his book. And he's bringing it to turn it in. So she ends up reading it and she hates it. So she makes him burn the book right in front of... She makes him actually burn the book. Now, can you imagine doing that, Kelly? All that hard work and all that, the one copy of the book, and then you have to burn it?
No, I was saying during that scene, I'm so thankful for technology and that I'm saving things in multiple places now. Because sometimes, you get this... inspiration strikes and it's you don't know if that'll come again. And even if it was terrible, you can go back and delete it. But to have someone force you to literally burn and destroy all this hard work, oh my gosh, I can't imagine.
No, I can't. So don't write books longhand, okay?
I don't plan to.
No, I like James Spader in Elf. The movie Elf.
You mean James Caan?
James Caan. And James Spader. No, James Caan is Will Ferrell's dad in the movie Elf. I don't even know what year that was, probably 2004 or something, but he doesn't look that much different.
He looks practically the same. And it's one of those actors that, when he started to look older, I think they were saying he was 45 or something in this movie. He probably, to me, he looks older than 45, but, he looks pretty much the same.
Yeah, I thought he looked older than 45, but then the same, 15 years later, so that was weird. Now, was this Kathy Bates? You might have already said this. Was this her first big movie?
Yeah, this absolutely sent her into stardom. They wanted a quote-unquote unknown to be Annie Wilkes, and she just blew up after this, and she's had quite a career. I think she was the first woman, you'll read about this in our book too, but I think she was the first woman to win the Academy Award for a horror movie. And that is very rare. And now people will say, well, this isn't really horror, it's more thriller or whatever. But let's embrace that horror label and let's take it, because I think some of the best performances are in horror movies.
Agreed. No, she said she was married before, and then I think when he was going through that scrapbook, he saw something that this banker guy fell off a building or something, so I'm assuming that she killed him. and that was her husband.
And I don't know, and I don't remember exactly, and especially with the differences from the book and the differences with season 2 Castle Rock, but I thought that was her father. But who knows?
Oh, her father. Okay, interesting. All right. I like, so after she spills the wine, they do the toast again, and then it's like to misery, and then the guy's like to misery. So it's like, you know, obviously a very fitting name for his whole situation.
I love that his novel collection is his main character is named Misery, and it's the name of this movie. It's such a great play on words, Stephen King. Like, bravo.
And then there was a cool montage of him like writing his book. The sheriff's reading all of his books, and like he's lifting up. It's kind of like a Rocky IV montage. He's like lifting up the typewriter, getting stronger, like getting ready to fight her.
Oh, I know, and he's gonna try so hard, and you just, gosh, especially like prior to that montage that you're talking about, but you know, he's trying so hard to like figure out what to do and sneaking out, and you just know what's coming, and you can't do anything. You can't look away. Like you know that the hobbling is going to happen, and it's so bad.
Yeah, I guess knowing that was coming, like from seeing the movie before, made it a little bit different to watch that scene. Like, this guy's trying so hard, thinking of everything. He's got very few resources to use, and you know, he's trying to be all crafty, and it just doesn't work out for him. And then he gets out, steals that huge knife, and he's practicing. Like, he's got his arm in a cast, and he's practicing how he's going to do it. And then he puts it under his mattress, and that's the night she realizes he was out and then drugs him so she can search his room. Yeah, and then he reaches for the knife, and it's gone. And she's like, "Oh, you're looking for this, huh?" And then, yeah, it just goes bad after that.
I really loved rewatching this movie. I haven't seen it again probably in a long time. Like, you and I have never watched it together, I don't think. So, you know, it's probably been 20 years since I've seen it. And what a great movie. What a great ensemble. I really loved everybody. Like, Lauren Bacall was his agent or his publisher. Like, that was pretty awesome. And this older couple, everybody was great. Like, what a good movie. Let's rank this on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being you hated it. 10 being you think it's a perfect movie. What's our scale? There's so many things.
I mean, for me, the most memorable thing is the hobbling. So,
oh God, I mean, yeah, just I guess hobbled feet, against that board.
And then, of course, before she does it, she has to tell him the story about like the diamond miners who would try to steal. Like they wouldn't kill him, obviously. They need him to work, so they would do this, so they couldn't get away. So it was like more psychological torture before she actually did it.
How many hobbled feet do you give Misery?
I'm going to give it a 10. I liked everything about it. I got the nostalgia factor from back in the day. Still, did a great job being this creepy, like self-righteous, like sociopathic, I don't know, just super fan. It's just, I don't know. I mean, yeah, James Caan was awesome, like playing her game, writing, trying to figure out a way out of there. Really like the sheriff character, and his wife has brought like a little like small town feel to it and a little bit of like quirkiness to it. So, and then yeah, really good.
I'm also giving it 10 out of 10 hobbled legs. That's a lot of legs to hobble for Annie Wilkes, but it's so solid. It holds up really well. Even the stuff that is dated, like, it doesn't bother me. It's not dated in a way that it's like, ugh, you know, this is so obnoxious or something. It's solid. It's good. It's scary. It gave me literal physical goosebumps more than once. And oh my God, after she hobbles him, she says, "I love you." And it's the most sexual line reading of the entire movie, how she says it and how she looks at him in that moment. And it's just so wrong, but it's so good. I'm also going to rank Castle Rock Season 2. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. There's a couple parts that are a little slow, and like I could have done without, you know, some slow moving things, but Elsie Fisher, who is the star of that Bo Burnham movie, 8th Grade, she is the daughter and Lizzie Kaplan plays Annie Wilkes. There's also some other famous people that you'll see, Tim Robbins being one of them, and they even talk about Shawshank. So this is not a spoiler. I think that if you watch season 1 of Castle Rock, you'll understand. There are some tie-ins to season 1, and you will appreciate it. Horror fans, and especially Stephen King fans, I say, give it a couple episodes if you're not sure, but I really like the dynamic between the mother and the daughter, and of course everything that they get into in this town. It's one of those classic Stephen King plots, and you'll see what I mean when you watch it.
Hey horror readers, it's Meg, and I want to talk to you about this book. I just finished it a couple minutes ago, and just like any good book, I'm sort of like floating in the bliss of the ending. It's actually a biography. It's called Shirley Jackson, A Rather Haunted Life by Ruth Franklin. And, I know that I'm probably prone to hyperbole. When I'm talking about horror movies and horror books, but I can safely say that this book has changed my life, which I realize is a really sort of high praise, and it's going to be hard for me to sort of explain why, but I must tell you that there are some times in our lives when we come across a movie or a book or a play or a comic book or anything, art, and there's something fundamental in it that changes who we are and how we see the world. And I'm surprised to tell you that it was a biography that did that for me. Obviously, I am giving this a 10 out of 10, if not like 100 out of 10. But I need to explain why I love this book so much. Now, you guys have heard me, if you've ever listened to me before, you've heard me go on and on about why I love Shirley Jackson so much. And as I've gotten older, I've been more drawn to her literature. Other than The Lottery, she's not really taught in school very much, or considered, one of the sort of classic writers that you find in college. And so it really took after college for me to really fall into what she does. And there's something about my life right now and what she's writing about in her fiction that makes such a perfect sense to me. I love the way she writes. I love the themes that she's discussing. If you haven't, you should go back and listen to us discuss the movie version of We've Always Lived in the Castle if you want to hear me gush some more about Shirley Jackson. In fact, sometime after I started this book, I started rereading, I should say, The Haunting of Hill House, because that was a book that I had read and maybe didn't give it full respect. And now I'm reading it with these new eyes, and it's bliss. Okay. I feel like I need Kelly here to hold on to. She would understand how I'm feeling right now. I know she would. So how do I explain it? Well, Shirley Jackson only lived until she was 48 years old, but she created literature that is female-driven horror, and really it's more than that. It's many things, but that's one aspect of what she did. But there are elements of her life and her balance in life, trying to be a writer, trying to be a mother, trying to be a wife, trying to be so many things to so many different people, that resonates with me on the most profound level. And I've been taking what I'm learning from Shirley Jackson's life, both the wonderful things she did, but also the mistakes she made, and I'm really implementing them into my life as a creative person, but also as a wife and mother. And it's interesting because the book really is historical, because obviously we're going back into the 1950s, the 1940s, and obviously being a wife and mother was a completely different thing back then. The pressure was even more real in a lot of ways, especially in the housekeeping, homemaking aspect of it. And she constantly felt that pressure. but she also wanted to speak her truth, and she wanted to sort of expose the dark side of life. And that's what I'm always drawn to and what I want to do. And now I don't have as much talent in my whole body that Shirley Jackson had in her pinky finger, but if I can live every day sort of thinking about her memory and what she was trying to accomplish, I think maybe I can be a better person. So if that's not a ringing endorsement, I don't know what is. This book, if you love literary criticism, which I very much do, had so many fascinating takes on things. It was so well researched and went to every aspect of her life, from, her problems with weight, her issues with her mother, her issue in her marriage, how she felt as a mother. And what I will say is that, unfortunately, there is a lot of time spent on her husband's biography in the book, which makes sense. He was an important part of her life. But spoiler alert, you're not going to like him. So that definitely, there were times where I would get upset that Shirley was putting up with him. But what a brilliant book. And while in the midst of reading it, I went and got all the novels of hers that I haven't read. So strap in, because I'm sure you're going to hear a lot of me talking about the brilliance of Shirley Jackson. I've already told you to read the short stories. I told you to read We've Always Lived in the Castle, and of course, Haunting of Hill House, which I think is a really good intro to her. Because you can read it very on the surface, but you can also get really deep down into the feminism and the sort of psyche of Eleanor in it, which we do that in The Science of Women in Horror, which is coming out very soon, where I got to gush about Shirley Jackson a little bit in the book. So if that's not enough for you to run out and go get this book, I don't know what will make you get it. It only changed my life. And I don't know. I think that I don't expect everyone to read that book with the same eyes. Obviously, it touched a nerve with me, a good nerve of okay, she is dealing with similar things I'm dealing with, and issues in her past that I understand, and all of these things that just coalesced into this sort of mirroring for me, which again, I'll never be as talented as her, but if I could just work every day to even try, it's so easy as a creative, and I know people listening right now have creative hearts. I know as a creative, it can be hard when the world's kind of against you sometimes, because sometimes it feels like things aren't set up for you to create, but art is so important. And for me, it's words, but it might be something totally different for you. But if there's something I learned from Shirley Jackson's short life, it's that we're all complicated human beings, and we all deserve the chance to create and be who we are. Does that sound like it should be on a tea towel or something? Maybe it should. Sorry, I'm spouting aphorisms, but I'm just really excited. And, this is the kind of book that makes me just love books so much, and love literature, and love talking about books. And if you've read it and you want to chat about Shirley Jackson, A Rather Haunted Life by Ruth Franklin, hit me up, because I will definitely talk to you about it. All right, I'll see you guys in the horror book section. Bye.
So until next time, we'll see you in the horror section.
Bye.